And the last time we had already go to work in a coffee plantation, and I already had started to learn, and I made 5 videos about that time, I think. But this time I was so excited and ready to keep learning more words. That was the second time we were going to live and work in our coffee plantation, where there's no electricity, but it was only for 2 weeks. And I already had planned what I was going to do, which was to learn words in different languages that I like, and of course while working in our coffee plantation. Always first what I have to do is prepare my bed. There are mosquitoes and it's very cold at night, and so like that I can sleep well. The next day I was getting ready to start learning languages using my flashcards. Last time we were there working, I couldn't memorize 15 words in a day, so that time I decided to just study 6 each day, because I realized that my brain is not good to memorize so many words. Always when I was working, I was carrying my flashcards in my pockets, and that helped me memorize while I worked.
That's pretty good.
And the first job to do was the picking or the shell of the coffee. I don't know how to say it, but shelling the coffee is not only done by me and my family. There are also people who work with us who need jobs, so they help us the picking or the shelling part. Then my father found some bananas, but it was not ready to eat yet. Then I started shelling more coffee. It was the perfect time to try to memorize other words in each language using flashcards. And using a board with which I can erase many times, because before I used to use paper, but now I don't waste many paper. Finally, in the afternoon, I was able to write the 6 words in each language without looking and use the flashcards. The next morning, I was spreading the green coffee, which doesn't need to be washed because the red beans are the ones that need to be peeled in the machine, washed and dried under the sun. I am the one who put it in that way. The husks or peels of the coffee, my father has to take it and put it around the roots or stems of the coffee plants. And my other brother is the one who had to move and pick the coffee beans that are not well peeling to put it again in the peeler machine. That day I was memorizing my next flashcards. I always have to write it many times until I feel like I can write everything without looking at my flashcards. When I feel like I can remember everything, I don't repeat it again. The next day it was time to wash the first part of the coffee beans. Then it was time to dry it under the sun for 2 days. So we keep peeling more coffee in the coffee machine that later also had to be washed. During the afternoon, I was writing the words that I was memorizing. That night I was so happy because I was actually memorizing 6 words every day. My nephew wanted to go and live with us for a few days because he loves to play with dust using his cars, and I also put that around the bed of my nephew, like that he doesn't get cold at night and the mosquitoes can't bite him in the night. He was also so happy because he loves to play in the dust.
That's pretty good.
And while we were working, I kept memorizing the words that I had to learn that day. I felt that I was able to remember everything. And while I was writing and memorizing, he also made some drawings, and that he also wanted to show you. He said that he drew some trucks, and while I was working, I kept trying to remember, and I was thinking about the words I learned that day. And the next day I had to start with my next 6 flashcards, while my nephew kept playing with the dust. We also had to peel more coffee. My father was doing his part carrying away the peels of the coffee, and my brother was choosing the coffee beans that had not peeled well the machine to put it again in the coffee machine. my nephew was helping her to pick or choosing the seeds of the fruit, seeds that we also eat. So my nephew was very happy helping us. And then I went back to work on my part with my parents. I kept memorizing the flashcards, the new words I had to learn that day. I also had the pronunciations written on the flashcards, but even like that, I knew that I had to look for it again on the internet to continue learning the correct pronunciations. The next day in the morning, while I was studying my new flashcards, the dessert that my mother was preparing was ready. It's normally eaten and prepared during the Holy Week, but my mother prepares it several times a year because she knows that we love to eat it. That day, the children of our workers who sell our coffee arrived and they wanted to play with my nephew. And while I was studying with my flashcards, they were telling me that they would like me to be their English teacher someday because they were seeing my flashcards. And then they had to go to their home because their parents had finished work. Then my parents took us to buy some things to eat. And the place where we were going has been called for years the edge of the bridge.
Nope.
The next day, while I was studying my new words, we were preparing this for people who work with us. Then we continued in the afternoon working, peeling the coffee. And finally, I was able to memorize my other new words. The next day was the last day to work for our workers, so we organized a small celebration. And in the afternoon, we continued working. My nephew had already been living for several days with us. In the afternoon, I was finally able to finish learning my new words. The next day, while we were trying the coffee, my nephew wanted to help us. I was preparing to learn my new words while helping my parents. In the afternoon, I was sure that I was able to write it and remember those words. And finally, the next day, I had finished memorizing all the flashcards about the most used verbs. And that day, I wanted to review everything again. In the 9 days, I could memorize 6 flashcards every day. And we were also about to try all the coffee to go back to our town. The next day, because I had nothing else to do, I decided to study the irregular verbs in English for my last exam that will be soon. Studying there, it feels good because you can see the beautiful landscape. The next day, we only had a little work left, but it was cloudy and rainy, so we stayed another day. That day, my mom made my favorite dessert again. And the next day, we were finally completing our last works there. The sky was clear and we were finally going back to our town. And now that I live again with electricity and internet, I will continue learning using the flashcards. I hope you felt inspired to learn the language you like. And if you are already learning, tell me which technique you use or in which way you are learning, because all the ways are good, I think. So I hope you like this video. Bye, thank you.